You know, it was violent, was hit by a petrol bomb on his helmet that engulfed, you know, his upper body, and I've not seen skin leave a torso like it before. His tattoo was just, it would come off, skin was just dripping off. It wasn't textbook, it was far from it. It was carnage, chaos, disorientation. And when we were going to commit, there was no going back. We hit Iraq in 2004 at the uprising. And then later on, after I think it was the 1st of June, Johnson Bahari was then hit by, you know, a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, pretty much direct.
When we talk about becoming a true leader, I don't think there's a better person to tell his story than Brian Wood, or Woody, as he likes to be called. He served for 17 years in the British Army. He was involved in the Battle of Danny Boy in Iraq, and he led the first bayonet charge in 25 years. He was awarded the Military Cross for his bravery, and his whole life has been adapted into a book and a BBC drama called Danny Boy. If you are looking to gain the respect of people around you, if you are looking to become a true leader, then Brian in this podcast will show you how to do it. This is the Into the Mind podcast, and my name is Harrison Brown. If you're watching or listening, I hope this helps. Your family has over 300 years in the military. Do you think that you were kind of born for a military role, or where did it kind of begin?
I think military was always, you know, spoken about in the family. I'd see my dad in his uniform, you know, most mornings. So it was always there. But my dad would never force the issue. He was, you know, similar to where I am now with my boys. Whatever they choose to do, that I will support, and he was the same. He would support me. And to be fair, I was destined to be a footballer, like many. Didn't make the cut, but I was at Chelsea when I was younger. And
really?
Then I went to Reading. And then I was released because I wasn't strong enough. I hadn't developed, and they just said that they weren't going to take a risk on me. So, after that, big knockback. I mean, that was the first experience of sort of not making the grade and having to sort of understand why, because football was my life, it was my passion. And that was the first big knockback, really, that I'd experienced. But yeah, I mean, my sort of secondary course of action was the military, because it's kind of what I'd seen most mornings with my dad in uniform, and my brother, he was off serving as well. And it just was really appealing to me, because my dad would talk about this brotherhood, this team, this organisation, this institution with so many attributes, and also the biggest one was making a difference for this country. That's what my dad always used to say, just make a difference. Whatever you do in life, try and make a difference. And for me, it's a big difference, you know, trying to help support this great nation. So it was always around. Obviously, we've got loads and loads of family history. I mean, my great-granddad, my granddad, my dad, my brother. My dad's got like 10 brothers, and most of them served as well. And so it was, that maybe had been a bit of an influence after I never made it as a footballer.
Yeah. But
seeing my dad in uniform and the pride that he used to take in his uniform, and, you know, it was nice. It was good to see that from a young age. And also the sort of the military discipline and values, and making sure that we understood home values. Like within the military, it's like values and standards are the holy grail. I mean, you have got to really make sure that you're on them and you understand each value and what they actually mean. They're just not letters; they actually mean something. But my dad actually, you know, made me understand them a lot earlier than most, because of what he believed in, and and the values that he really believed in at home. And that was like making sure we had dinner at the table together. The way we spoke to my mum, you know, had to be, you know, courteous. You know, we needed to display selflessness, helping others. My dad was like a master at that. You know, what he's done for others is incredible, and you know, people always remind him how much he has done, whether it's in sport or whether it's helping people who need it within the charity arena. So yeah, he was a big impact. I always talk about my dad and how much, yeah, he, I don't know, showed me the way, I think, as a young man, because as far as I'm concerned, he's my hero. Obviously, I love my mum to pieces. Yeah. I've recently just seen them actually yesterday. But my dad, he was just like, that's who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And still want to be like.
Yeah. I think there's this huge influx of people that want to join the military at the moment. And I think it's partially because people maybe struggle with a purpose. And I think that the military gives them that structure and that purpose to move forward. And I think the brotherhood of the military is kind of partly to do with that, because you do have people that are relying on you and you're relying on people. And I think that gives you that purpose in life. Do you think that that's quite valid?
Yeah. It gives you an understanding and a belonging as well. It gives you an identity. You know, so if you're lost and you're soul searching, you know, you can really gain a strong identity within the military, and you can really flourish. You can put yourself on all different types of courses. You travel the world. You know, you're operating and working so close with other men and women. It's such a tight organisation, and like you say, with structure, people need structure in life.
Yeah.
You know, and it gives you that. It gives you the time that you've got to be at a place with the right kit, what you're going to be doing. You know, you have to be, you know, physically able to conduct the role that you're in, but you get trained and educated for that and invested in within that. So I've got a love affair with the military. It's great. You know, it's my son's in 2 para now. You know, he's doing his thing, and I'll always support it, because I just think they're the top 5% of this nation. You know, we talk about, it's not just operational commitments as well. We talk about, if there's floods, then the British military will be involved. If the vaccinations, the rollout, the British military were involved. If there's a strike at the airport, the British military will step up and go and fill shoes. It's just firefights, fire strikes. The military will step up and become firemen. Yeah. And firewomen. It's just, there's just more that meets the eye with the military. Leadership, you know, it just, you are at the highest level of understanding leadership and what that looks like. Management is the same. You know, you get to understand the characteristics of it all, because you're educated in slow time, and you're given the tools, and then it's down to you how to then become this manager, this leader, because you've given so much information.
And on that, so you described this process of being given these tools by this incredible brotherhood. What kind of tools did you receive when going through training for the military, in terms of the management style, and also the respect? I think that a lot of being a manager is just having the respect from your colleagues, and not telling them when they do something wrong, but instead encouraging them when they do something right. And I think that's the most effective management kind of style. Yeah. Were you learnt about that when you first joined?
Yeah, like, you making so many mistakes. So many. It's like, you're young. I was 16 and 9 months when I joined. So I'm like,
you were 16?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I left the home at 16 and 9 months to go into this military organisation, which was full of discipline, full of respect, full of young, hungry men, because I was in the infantry. So it was in my time, it was all male. Now it's different. Women can join the infantry now, but in my time it was just all male. So there's a lot of testosterone. There was a lot of energy. But with energy, you make some rash decisions and you get a lot of stuff wrong. But do you know what? It's a part of learning. Like, you never fail really within the military. You just, you learn a lot. You know, failure is a punchy word, and I don't like using that word. You know, you learn. You make mistakes. You figure out why you made them mistakes. You learn from it, and then you move forward. And a lot of instructors are like that, and they really invest in showing you the right way. And they expect you to make mistakes because it's life. Everyone makes mistakes, but if you're making them 4, 5, 6 times, that's a problem. So they make sure, look, that's not acceptable. Sort it out. Yeah. There's standards here, and you're below par, so you've got to sort it out. I've showed you this like 4 times. What aren't you getting? So they don't sack them off. But they have conversations. Why aren't you, getting this? And it could be anything to do with weapons. It could be field craft, map reading. Some people do take a little bit longer to learn and kind of make it stick than others. But you shouldn't be talking about something the 6th, 7th time. But it happens sometimes, and it's down to you as a leader, as an instructor, to not just sack the person off because he's not. It's like, what can you do extra, to make sure that these people do understand what you're teaching, and that's going above and beyond, you as an individual.
I think that's a great point that you make as well about, when it comes to the 4th or 5th or the 6th time, right, get your act. And I think that specifically in business and management, what I've seen is when there's a lack of respect between the manager or the sergeant or whatever it is in the military and the sort of the layer below them, they don't have those tough conversations. So there's a lack of respect because they haven't challenged. And then if they don't challenge a mistake and they keep allowing it to happen, then when they do challenge it, the guy or the girl or whatever it is kind of like, why are you challenging me now? You've never challenged me before. So is knowing how to have those tough conversations. Is there a kind of learning that you took from the military in order to understand how to have those conversations with people?
I think you have to have these conversations because when we go operational and go to foreign fields, then we are preparing to warfight. And if you can't have these challenges or these conversations back in barracks, then they're going to have a detrimental effect on operations. Absolutely. Because if there's something the air hasn't been cleared, and you're going into an environment where you're hyper vigilant, you're under so much pressure, then it will come to a boil. So you have to have these grown up conversations to say, look, we're going away in 6 months. You're not at the criteria or at the standard, or whatever a conversation it is, you have to get it cleared up. So we're acutely aware that needs to happen before we end up going away. Even on exercises, so it's not kinetic, it's not war, but you're still training. But you train to such a high level that there is still a lot of pressure. You're being examined, you're being looked at through a microscope and also as an individual, you want to progress through the ranks. So you have to make sure you're all over your stuff. And these conversations, they're difficult, but you have to have them.
I think without them, you don't grow.
Of course.
And if somebody is in a senior position, they've got there for a reason, and it's up to them to teach the people that want to be in their position so that they can then move up and the people below them can move up. And that's great management, is having someone that can step into your shoes. And I was listening to a podcast with you last night, and you were saying, you were talking about one of your tours, and that private security had trained one of the army recruits how to drive an armored vehicle, even though he didn't need to because he was private. And because of that, it might have saved his life.
Yeah, it was a private soldier actually, the driver. So and he actually was awarded the Victoria Cross. That was Johnson Bahari. So he had a bit of foresight and was like worst case, if I'm hit, someone else needs to jump in and drive this, because not everyone is driver trained, especially an armoured vehicle.
Yeah.
So he was like, when there was downtime, he was proactive with that downtime. So, and that's like, as a private soldier, that's going above and beyond, because a lot of people don't think like that. So he said to me, he's like, got the lads around and said, right, if there's something happens to me or other drivers, this is the basics on how to get this armoured vehicle moving. And he showed the lads, like each day, he showed them how to start it up and how to put it into drive, and what needed to happen once it was, in flow. Yeah. So he'd done that. But going back to sort of the education piece, is in that belonging, in that brotherhood, they get round each other. So if someone's struggling, sometimes as the instructor or the corporal or the sergeant really don't need to engage, because the lads will get round each other and show them the ropes. So it's kind of, you've created this incredible team that are as one. So you don't really have to get involved unless it's like really bad.
Something serious.
Yeah. Because they deal with it in-house. Because there's some people who are like young soldiers, but who are very good. And they will be like, well, I can show him how to do that. We'll just repetition. We'll just keep doing it and keep doing it until keep doing it, muscle memory until you get it right. Yeah. So, it's the military create that because it is one big family, and they don't want to see anyone struggling. As lads, you're like looking around thinking, oh, he's like having a hard time there, but we'll leave him. We'll come away. And that may be something which is a little bit different from the military to civilian life, where some people would let you sink. Yeah. Where in the military, that's just it's not heard of.
I think that's a really important thing, because the most toxic people, I don't want to say toxic, but the most, the people that sink normally are the ones that don't help others. Yeah. From what I've seen, and I've experienced it within business, the people that offer you the hand and try and bring you up with them understand that there's enough pieces of the cake for everyone. But the pieces that have that toxic mentality and don't help each other within business are normally the ones that sink. Yeah. And I think that army mentality of the brotherhood and helping each other out in terms of, right, listen, one guy's struggling, let's help him before it becomes an issue, is so, so important.
Absolutely.
And I think that people in civilian life can really take a huge piece of that and and learn and try and help other people when they need it. Yeah. Is there a certain point in time that you've had to give that helping hand to a colleague or a brother in arms?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. It's not uncommon for people to struggle on fitness. I would like to think I was, I prided myself on my appearance, how I looked and how I delivered on the physical events, because I knew if you were fit, then you had more of an impact, because you can lead and control at the most intensive situations, and that was apparent when I did go operational. So there was a lot of people that weren't on that sort of level who needed remedial, but these people, they just need a bit of investment, reassurance that they can get to the level what is expected with a training program. Whether it's first thing in the morning, you get up and you do a bit extra, or in the evenings that you do a bit extra, because self-motivation can get you, to where you need to be. But sometimes an arm around the shoulder, creating a program for someone is infectious, and that gives someone the drive to really push on. But also there's an expectation in the military, and that's discipline. If you're not fit and you're not maintaining the standards, then your values are questioned, because it's not money or a project that's been affected, it's human life. Because when you do go operational, if this individual is not at the standards where he should be, then he has an effect on the rest of the team, because he's not at a standard where he should be, and I just wouldn't have it. My standards were pretty high, and those who have operated with me or who have worked with me know that you have got to be on your game
Yeah.
And there's no excuses, because you would be given all the tools and all the time to get to where you need to be. And if you're not producing, then I'm sorry, you're not coming operational, because you just have a massive effect on the others.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing you were discussing there, especially about I think, do you get any kind of emotional training when it comes to the army, or is the brotherhood kind of what keeps you sane in essence? Because I think that when you do go out to these on these excursions and do become operational, it can have a serious mental toll on people, especially from what you've seen or what they have seen. Is there any kind of emotional support within the army?
It's a lot better now.
Yeah.
When I was away scrapping, there was not a lot there. Early days, but they've learnt, and now they've acted, and there's like sort of trauma risk management when people have been away. There's like decompression to talk about what's gone on within your tour, or if there's sort of a traumatic incident that's happened, then you're encouraged to talk about it, which is important. Where with us, it was just like, you've been fighting like mad. Next day, you're in the house, like try and get back to normal, and it's really difficult, because when you've been hyper vigilant for half a year, it's a long time. 6 months is how long you're out on tour for, maybe a bit longer. To then just come back and just switch off, it's really, really difficult. It's hard. I don't think there's no perfect way to even describe it, because everyone reacts different to when they come home. But like I said, there is courses or elements of trim now within the military, and they do a lot now for soldiers, which is right, because even soldiers who are abroad, they just can't on a Friday pack up and go and see their families. And these are young soldiers, like 18, 19 years old, who are away from home. Let's take Cyprus as an example, who are in the block, maybe a bit isolated on their own. Others are away on courses. How do you deal with the isolation of these individuals? Because if you leave them, that's when it becomes a bit of a problem. But now there's methods that are in place for that, because they can't just jump in a car and come home. They're in Cyprus. They're not going to get on a flight and just come back for the weekend. It's more than that. But yeah, it's definitely getting better on what I've heard. I've been away now for the military for a good while, but I do a lot of talks now within the military, and I'm aware of what's going on with like sort of op courage, which is like a team that will go around and talk about physical and emotional resilience, and elements of other people's stories that will be spoken about, and what was right, what was wrong, what we should be doing, and what we need to implement as we move forward. And it's definitely the right thing to do, for sure. So yeah, they're growing as an organisation as well.
That's amazing. And I think that there's so many sectors which really need that support, because I think mental health, like everything, is a muscle. So you need to keep exposing yourself to those uncomfortable situations that you don't want to make a scab, and then every time the scab rips off, you explode.
Yeah.
And everyone's had, not to the same extent as you, but everyone has mental issues that they probably need to deal with, including myself. And I think it's so important for people, especially leaders like yourself, to talk about that so that others can follow and be inspired. When we talk about mental resilience, we'll get to your marathon running, which, by the way, I think is insane. But to start with, talk to me about Iraq and kind of briefly what happened and how you managed that team in the scenario that you were in, because the Battle of Danny Boy was it was, I mean, wild.
Chaos.
It was, I mean, wild.
Yeah.
How did you manage that? The sponsors of this podcast are, of course, Chisholm Hunter. When it comes to the military and it comes to life in general, timing is of key importance. And thankfully, Chisholm Hunter have 29 stores throughout the UK and are industry leading in luxury watches. They sell watches from Omega, Tudor, Vacheron Constantin, Blancpain, and many, many more. If you are looking for your next timekeeping companion, then make sure you head to chisholmhunter.co.uk. That's chisholmhunter.co.uk. And on that note, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, so before we actually go away on operational tours, you do a pre-deployment. So you're working together 6 months prior to even going away. And when I'm talking about working together, you are away and you're living with each other, because this is what you're going to be doing on operations. You go through all different scenarios, from doing basic patrolling to doing urban exercises, which is fighting in built-up areas, to improvise explosive device lanes, what you need to do if you get casualties, multiple casualties, how to triage. So you are tested all of the time, and it's repetition as well. So you're put under so much pressure as a leader. And I was 23 years old when I went on my first, not my first tour, because I'd done 2 tours of Kosovo prior to going over to Iraq. But the principles didn't change. You'll still go away and do pre-deployment. You'll still go away and be tested at a very high standard with a lot of pressure, because people need to, or the higher sort of management team are looking at you to make sure that you're good enough and at a standard to go away on operations. Because if you're not, you'll fail, and you won't be either lead battle group or your regiment won't go away. So you are tested and tested and tested. So you get this incredible team cohesion. You get to understand what makes people tick. What's important to individuals, how to get the best out of individuals, because you're working with them
day in, day out,
and you're sleeping in the same compound as these people. So you soon get to know them really well, that if something at home is quite not right, because of the way the personalities that you get to know and understand, it's different, then there's kind of something's playing on someone's mind. And that's kind of how intimate you are with each other, because you are just on it every day, and you get to know these people so well. Even if you don't get on a professional level, it's irrelevant.
Yeah,
you're on it together, because like I say, everyone needs to be on the same mission, everyone needs to be focused, and everyone needs to make sure that when they go away, they can have a devastating effect once there's an escalation of evil. So we have to make sure we're all on the same song sheet. We're fit, we're robust, but also we understand the intent and mission command, which is so important. So you do that for 6 months before you even go away. And then we hit Iraq in 2004 at the uprising. So we were quite unfortunate, really. People would be like, yeah, we loved it. It was the first time we was out there absolutely full-on war fighting from start to finish. But I see it as a little bit unlucky, because there was no slow time orientation. There was no real handover takeover process, which normally that's what we do. We do a full-scale handover. This was like a fighting, crazy handover takeover, trying to understand the areas that you're in, the vulnerable points, the vulnerable areas, the spot codes, and you're trying to take all this in, but you're fighting like mad for the first time. And it was, for me personally, really, really hard to take it all in, to understand what I'm doing, to then try to command and lead with soldiers who have been in Iraq for the last 6 months, who are all over it, who get it, and it's like us for the first time experiencing kinetic warfighting, and how you're reacting to that as well, because you're always you get given the best training and you deliver, the best practice, but you never know how you're going to react until you're in that situation and shit hits the fan. And I used to question myself, thinking, I wonder how I'm going to react when I'm under effective enemy fire and it's like real time, because you never know, and it's fight or flight. And this was the first time I was reacting when it was like real life, full on fighting. And but flexibility is a principle of war. You've got to be flexible. They say in the military, no plan survives contact. So you can plan and plan and plan. When it goes noisy, there's always going to be something that you either missed, or there's something that you have to change because it doesn't suit what you thought originally that was going to happen. But you just have to evolve and be flexible. Don't let it overwhelm you, and just keep moving forward. And that's what I was doing at a young age as a lance corporal. So I wasn't a tactician at this point. I'd only done a junior NCO's cadre, so I was trying to figure out what sort of leader that I was. I tried to embrace the chaos, which is quite difficult sometimes, and lead with integrity and with courage. And it was a tough tour for many reasons. And obviously the Battle of Danny Boy, it's a very famous battle in its own right for a number of different reasons, from going into heavily defended positions across open ground like our greatest generation did, to then years later have the public inquiry of murder, mutilation and mistreatment from our actions that day, which were headed up by Phil Shiner, who was stripped of his honorary decorates for basically, it was deliberate lies and reckless speculation and ingrained hostility, but it still lasted for 5 years. So it had a big impact on my mental well-being, really, with all that pressure. But going back to Danny Boy, we were ambushed, and we were given orders to basically counter what we were up against, and that was to go and close and destroy the enemy stronghold. And under extreme pressure, like I said, across open ground, we still had to plan. We call it a cigar moment. In pure pressure situations, you're still entitled to have your moment to try and figure out how you're going to get from A to B and what that looks like, and have some courses of action if something happens, like casualties, or if we come across enemy depth, that there's another position that we have to consider as well. So there's a lot of planning phases. And even as a young 23-year-old, and as a leader of men, you have to plan and prep and then commit, and then you just have to give it everything that you've got. And that's what we did. I mean, we was under a lot of pressure. Looking back, I just think, how do we even do that? But we achieved it by working as a team, by believing in each other's ability. I'm sure we had a little bit of luck, because this was the first time that anyone's ever done anything like this that I was aware of. I mean, in this generation of going across open ground into defensive positions, and we were just about to do it. Yeah. So we just worked as there was 5 of us on the ground. There was me, another commander, and who was more senior than what I was. Come up with a plan. We then bounded forward in 2 teams, a team of 3, which was me and 2 others from my vehicle, and 2 lads who joined us a bit later on. They would then move forward. So we'd always have 1 foot on the ground.
Leapfrog.
Yeah, like leapfrogging. So we'd always have 1 foot on the ground, we call it, covering our movements, basically. We call it fire manoeuvre. And just approach that position. And, it was violent. There was a lot of trauma on the battlefield. That was the first time I'd seen an enemy forces or a human being killed and dead, and there was a lot. These bodies were hit by some like big sort of weaponry. 30mm is a huge caliber to be hit by, and you can only imagine the carnage that was in and around. There was a lot of verbal exchange at this point as well, because there was still fighters who surrendered, who put their hands up, and then you have to go into, I mean, we talk about courageous restraint. So when you're at an all-time level of adrenaline, which is an out-of-body experience when you're fighting for your life, and you're war fighting, in close quarter fighting, you can't really explain it. It's like a full-on out-of-body experience. And when people have been trying to kill you, and then you're so close to them and they surrender, having that courageous restraint and that professionalism to like not fire because they have now not got any weapons, it's hard to get it right. And sometimes you don't get it right because you're so up against it. You make a wrong choice, but there was no wrong choices that were done. We ceased fire. There was people were looking at me to make another decision. I was like, what's going on here? It's the first time I've ever been in a situation like this. All of their weapons were like lined up because it was an ambush. So they were all lined up like we would set an ambush and get all the sort of ammunition out ready, line up the sort of RPGs, and there's pictures of this when I do my presentation, just to give you an understanding of what we're up against. I mean, it was a full-on pre-planned attack on us, and then I've got to sort out now the prisoner of war, which are the militia fighters. Now I've got to try and like move them away from the dead, which was so many bodies in and around, and I've got to figure that out. And all of this when I knew that there were still enemy fighters out there. So we were in the actual positions with them, and it was just like, it was horrendous, if I'm honest. Mad.
And when you describe this process of you exit the vehicle and then you kind of leapfrog your way there with your team, how did you lead that team in terms of like, do you think it was the respect and their core values for you that drew them over the line with you and allowed them to follow you? Do you think you kind of led by example there?
I think you've got to. I'm always one to do something that, hopefully would empower some others. Wouldn't expect people to do something that I'm not prepared to do myself. So me getting out of that vehicle first was important to me, to go into like a bit of a holding position, to then get an understanding of what's going on, because in the back of a vehicle it's really disorientating and confusing. So I wanted to just get to like phase one, which was a bit of an area that will give us cover from view and cover from fire, and then I can then go and have a look at what's going on. But like I said before, you've created this incredible bond 6 months prior to where we're at the moment. So you've shown these soldiers the best of you and the worst of you, because you do get things wrong and you have to tidy up. And they've seen that. They've been on this process with you. They've gone into the scenarios and the situations with you on repetition. So they get it. This is now real. So what we've been practicing, now we've brought into real time, albeit it doesn't happen very often going into positions like that. But we'd still planned for it and practiced. So that's got a lot to do with it as well.
Sort of instinctive.
I think so. And also it's, you're always, we talk about accountability. So when you go through these scenarios and you're picked up on different areas that you can do better on an after action review, we all then get together and we're accountable. So lads will say, I should have done X, Y, and Z. Next time I know that I need to work harder on that. Or, I should have been on that casualty quicker. I should have had the tourniquet out ready and prepared. I now know that I need to implement that. So you're always sort of accountable for what you're involved in, and I think it's just with that cohesion, the time that you're with each other before you even go away, you get it, and you can ask and you can demonstrate, and no doubt they'll follow, because it's what our job is as well. It's not to question orders, because people say, oh yeah, but that was a bit of a barking mad order. But what, define a barking mad order? Look, we were ambushed, they were set, we weren't quite set, but we countered it, you know, and we're here to tell the tale. So actually what we did was right, and we got the job done.
Yeah.
Yes, it wasn't perfect. They say in the press it was like the textbook. It wasn't textbook, it was far from it. It was carnage, chaos, disorientation. But we achieved the end state, and that was to close and destroy and capture, you know, the enemy on that position. And we did it by working together, that overriding belief that we could do it. And when we were going to commit, there was no going back. That wasn't even in the quick battle orders, the QBOs as we call it. It was no. Once we go, we go. If we have a casualty, once the position's clear, we'll come back and deal with the casualties. And that is just the full-on belief of the intent.
Yeah.
Because once you get hold of that intent, you know, you've got to do everything to achieve the mission. And that's what it was, to just get amongst it.
And so you have this absolute chaos with this battle, and then you have the kind of aftermath, which is obviously everyone went through a huge amount of trauma and a huge amount of mental pressure and mental stress. And I remember you kind of described this process when you were back at camp, that you had to obviously pick the bodies off the ground and bring them back. And a gentleman went into the car.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Not a car. It's an armoured vehicle.
Right.
So basically, there was a total of 20 militia who were killed in action, and 9 taken as POWs, prisoner of war, after this massive battle that we and others were involved in. Once the battlefield was secure by us, there was basically an order from brigade, which is our higher intent, that they believed that Bravo 1, which is the main militia leader, was either killed or captured. And if he was killed or captured, the whole dynamics of the rest of the tour would have been completely different. It would have changed, and they knew that. But the only way to make sure that that was the case was to go back and retrieve these bodies, load them up into these vehicles, take them back to our camp, and then the medical side of it would deal with DNA to find out, you know, if Bravo 1 was killed or captured. But it was the worst, in my opinion, the worst decision ever made. I mean, it's hard enough taking a life, you know, from close quarters, you know, and I talk about my involvement in that with, you know, engaging a young 17-year-old, and you know, he was just about to engage me. I was quicker, and I engaged him into his chest and into his throat, and having that so intimate engagement, the noise, the choking, you know, it's hard yards, because that just never, I can manage it now, but you can't just switch it off and never think about that ever again, because it's a war scar, it's a battle scar, and it will stay with me forevermore. You know, he's 17 years old, this young fighter was. You know, my son now is 19 and just starting his life as a young adult. So as I've, you know, growing up, I do think about that, because he had no adult life, basically. And it's and I know it's realities of war, and people do say, yeah, but if it wasn't him, it was you. And then my sons grow up, or Bailey grows up without a dad, and I get that. But until you've been through what I've been through, I don't look at it like that. And then to go back and pick this lifeless body up, you know, and carry him onto the vehicle and load him up onto the vehicle, knowing it was you that you know, ended this individual's life. I tell you what, it's difficult to manage sometimes. It's hard.
And how did you, when you returned, how did you start to process that, and what were the steps that you took to I mean, aside from the court case, which by the way I couldn't even imagine after the trauma you went through, then having the mental strain of essentially lies thrown at you. How did you kind of manage that trauma? Do you think there's any steps that you could guide people on to sort of try and manage that?
I got it all wrong, if I'm honest. But I wasn't educated on, and it's in 2004, well-being was not even touched on. It was stiff upper lip, get on with it, let's move, let's keep moving, and let's keep attacking. That's the mindset back then. Nothing was ever spoken about on post-trauma, what it looked like. And I was involved in a lot of trauma within my military career. I was involved in the first of May. I was involved in a massive ambush, which we were heavily under siege. 2 missiles come straight for the side of our vehicle, caused carnage in the back of this vehicle. We were not all injured ourselves, up to our knees in diesel. There was a fire. It was just utter madness. Managed to survive that. Weeks later, involved in the Battle of Danny Boy, which was absolute. That
was very close then. So
yeah.
'Cause I remember you describing this process. You had a bit of shrapnel in your arm. The gunner had, was it shrapnel, or he'd been shot through his groin?
No, the gunner was burning.
Oh my God.
There was Cruz, the lad opposite me, had a massive chunk of shrapnel that was smashed his nose to pieces really, and it was stuck in his face. And Irv, the lad in the back, had been pebble dashed with from the explosion, shrapnel all around his legs, and was like heavily bleeding. And then the floor of this thing was like filling up with diesel. I was choking with the smoke. It was like not a great situation to be in, because I didn't have control of what was going on. I wasn't the driver of the vehicle to get us out of this killing area. That's what we call it, like when you're really vulnerable and you're like being in a choke point that you're getting smashed and you've got no way of getting you out of there. We're just like waiting to explode basically. It was, and I speak about it in the book, that I was more in fear in the back of that vehicle than I was going over open ground into that position on Danny Boy, because I could control that.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think it was because you're essentially stuck in this vehicle?
I was stuck in the vehicle. We were stuck in the vehicle, and I could hear it getting battered. And then there was chaos inside, and it's like, how this is mad. So that was the 1st of May. 14th of May was Danny Boy.
Right.
And I think before the 1st of May, a very good friend and incredible leader that I wanted to imitate was hit by a petrol bomb on his helmet that engulfed his upper body, and I've not seen skin leave a torso like it before. His tattoo was just, it would come off, skin was just dripping off. That had happened as well. And Danny Boy, and then later on, after I think it was the 1st of June, Johnson Bahari was then hit by a rocket propelled grenade launcher, pretty much direct, and we had to drag him out. Me and Coops dragged him out of the vehicle, unresponsive. So that was just that tour. And then my second tour of Iraq, there was more trauma, because unfortunately one of the lads put a light machine gun in his mouth and pressed the trigger, and I was like third person onto that scene as well, and it was just like, that was horrendous. And it just seemed to be one thing after the other, but not knowing how to kind of deal with it. Once you return, it was like sort of self-help. There's no such thing as self-help, because you haven't got the tools or the capability to help yourself. You just kind of manage it, and it's not good, because you start doing a lot of shit that you shouldn't be doing, whether it's your temper,
drinking, or,
boozing, even like, for me, I never used, alcohol as kind of a shield. I was quite angry and very verbal, the way I was, which wasn't good enough. That's like one thing that I definitely got wrong, and I wish I could go back and change, but I've learned from it. But yeah, I mean, there was nothing really there to give you an understanding of what it is that you've just gone through. So one minute you're fighting like mad, next minute you're home through the door. Like many, I left my son when he was like 4 weeks old, and then I've come back and he's like, this
growing.
This baby who's now 6 months old, who's now not in a Moses basket, who's in a pushchair. I'm like trying to play catch up as a father, getting a lot of stuff wrong, being very frustrating, probably resenting the relationship that Bailey had with his mum because they were so close, and rightly so. Like, no one really asks how the women do when they're on their own, trying to get on with life.
Before we move on with this podcast, I need to ask you a really quick favor. If you could hit that subscribe button, 5-star button, follow button, whatever it is, wherever you are, I would really appreciate it. We're trying to reach our next goal of 1,000 subscribers, followers, listeners, whatever it might be, and you would really help us get there. If you have ever taken any value from these podcasts, then please consider hitting that subscribe button. And with that said, let's get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, no one really talks about the women who are at home, who all of a sudden are single mums because their husbands or their wives are actually away. So the husbands are at home, trying to deal with newborn, trying to figure it out. I was quite selfish. I was like, deal with it, basically, which is like a really poor attitude to have. But like, I was 23. I didn't know how to be a dad, and I just kind of left her to it. But then when I came back, I then wanted to be this dad, and it was all very frustrating. But people that stay behind when their husbands or wives go away, they are the unsung heroes, and they're people that don't get enough credit, in my opinion, because they do just as much for the family, if not more, than what we do for sure. So they should never be forgotten about, because they sacrifice so much as well, and they have to then take the brunt on us coming home and not being very nice and trying to understand how to be at home again, because it's a massive change. It's a huge change. 6 months away, even if it's not war fighting, is a long time for being away. So you have to be patient. You have to give yourself a bit of time and then reintegrate, at a slow pace. And that's sort of my advice on that, really.
It's hard for a 23-year-old though to understand and know that. So you get home, you have this kind of shock to the system, so to speak, and then this public inquiry is announced by this lawyer. And by the way, I listened to something that you said that I think is really quite inspirational. There's this lawyer that's throwing fictitious stuff at you, really, because it's fake what he's saying. It's not factual. And you said that in your book, Double Crossed, you could have gone for him, you could have slandered him, you could have slated him, but you never did that.
No.
And you even tried to reach out to him to get him involved in the movie. And I think that's such a key point of a leader, because you don't want involved. Past's past. Let's leave it. Bygones be bygones. Even though he really put mental torment on you.
Oh, it was torture. But listen, you're not going to get anything out of hurting someone who's already injured. Like, he is in the press. He's a shyster. He is not a very nice human being, but I will never put a knife into someone and twist it when they're injured. I'm better than that. And I didn't rinse him in the book. I highlighted the damage that he caused, and I highlighted a lot of other stuff that the Ministry of Defence needed to change, and maybe have a look at some of the procedures that they've got, and maybe tweak them or change them because they weren't good enough. But I'm always about growth and learning. That no organisation's perfect. We get it wrong. China got it wrong. I spoke about it and wrote about it in the book. The MOD got it wrong in areas. I wrote about it and highlighted it in the book, but I didn't smash them. There's no point. What's that going to achieve? It's going to achieve nothing. He's got to live with his lies. He's got to live with the effect that it caused on so many, and the hurt and the pain and the separations and the fueling trauma, fueling drugs, drink, ending people's careers. He's got to live with that. Whether he's got a conscience or not, that's immaterial. He's got to live with that. He's got to go to the shops, and the great British public are brutal,
Yeah.
They will do the punishment for me. They will have it out. They will, do the comments and make the comments. He's got to live with that. And actually now he's going into the stand next year. And he's up against some pretty punchy allegations, which, well, they're not even allegations, it's the truth. So he'll probably go down for an element of time. So karma is a thing of beauty, isn't it? If you try and do the right thing, and if you believe in it, no matter how hard it is, and it was like, listen, I struggled a lot when the inquiries were announced, because I had photographers outside my door. I had IHAT, which is a historical allegations team after me, asking questions to my brother. It was the most pressure that I've ever been under, and that was the first time that I was like, I need to go and get help. I need to go and see a psychiatrist, because I am under some mad pressure, and I couldn't get away from the Battle of Danny Boy. I couldn't get away from the trauma. I just couldn't shake it. So this was everything, from all of the statements I now had to write and read and go through and then visit lawyers. I just couldn't shake it, and I was pretty broken, if I'm honest. And that was when I was down at Limpston, because I was a colour sergeant instructor, so quite a senior job, basically instructing corporals to become sergeants within the Royal Marines. I was the army instructor there, and it was there when I actually went and got some advice on the support that then followed. And it was hard, because I needed to display the same courage that I showed during the most intense fighting, but in a completely different arena. I was at home in the UK, but pretty broken, but I had to display the courage that I'd shown, but in a different battlefield. This is in my head now, which is, I mean, as you well know, it's a battlefield that you can't really understand, because it's such a powerful bit of kit, your mind. But I needed to do something, and it was the first time then, that I sort of spoke about all the legacy stuff that I'd been involved in, and got that out my system, which was like a massive shift in weight off my shoulders. And then spoke about the allegations and what came with the allegations, and how to manage that, and how to deal with the pressure, and how to deal with like the post-trauma. And then started to go through these sessions, which were incredible. It was a game changer really for me, because I then got to understand sort of why I was feeling certain ways, certain smells, punching in to positions, and how I could deal with that sort of daydreams, and how I could deal with them daydreams, because it used to make me feel like, I don't know, heart was racing, thinking, I don't want to be going back there again. But I could now manage that, because I understood why, I was doing them sort of, But it was just, then I just went on a growth spurt. I thought, right, I just need to grow through what I've learned now, and just, keep moving forward.
I think a huge part of it as well, and I think that men specifically really struggle with this, because there is kind of a stigma about it, is accepting that something is wrong.
Yeah.
Accepting that you actually...
Which accountability again, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's being accountable for what's going on within your head.
For yourself.
And your feelings.
Yeah, and it's accepting that, say that you are suffering from a bout of either PTSD or anxiety or depression. It's accepting that there is something wrong, and I need to have, as you said, the battle in my mind, and I need to start moving forward.
Yeah. You have to have the courage to go and, one, acknowledging there's something's not right, but more importantly, doing something about it.
Yeah.
And that is so important because, listen, we can have the best care hubs around the UK, multi-million-pound hubs, which have got everything there for you. But if you ain't going to be accountable, if you're not going to go and use these, then they're going to stay empty. So it's down to us as individuals to understand something's quite not right. And it could be anything. It could be gambling. It could be drugs. It could be drink. It could be pressure at work. It could be anything. It's fine. There is no problem if you go and get something, done about it, and it will absolutely be a game changer.
When you described this process of you had this really traumatic experience followed by then another mentally traumatic experience, and now looking into your future, you're running marathons daily. It's some of the things you're doing are absolutely blow my mind in a really inspiring way, because a lot of it is for charity, a lot of it's for your business, and it's really quite inspiring. You find that, and I've heard SES guys talk about this a lot, when you're within a war zone, that you only need to think of the next step and the next step and what are we doing next. And I think the kind of the thing about life is there's so many different things thrown at you that you're thinking about it all at once, and that can cause this huge amount of pressure and stress. So a lot of the SES and Army guys, after they've served, get into extreme sports or running or quite extreme events, because all they need to think about within that time is the next step.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of decompression time.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's quite fitting for yourself?
I think so. I think everything that we do it's always phased. Every operation is a phased operation. Phase 1, let's get to phase 1, and then we move on to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And it's always spoken about. So everything that we do with a set of orders, they'll be phased. And it's really important, step by step, so everyone knows when we're at the first step, when we're at the second phase, when we're at the third phase, and then, we'll then move forward. And I don't know, I think coming away from the military, the power of giving back is so important to me as well. It's so important because we're only 2 mistakes of being on our asses ourselves, and hopefully if I ever end up on my backside, there's some good people out there who are giving back. And that's how I see it. I should give back. As long as I'm breathing, I should do something. And I support the military charities, and I'll put my body on the line like I did with the marathons in 2021, where I ran for the fallen from Afghanistan and Iraq, and I pledged that I'd run 26.2 miles a day, and each day I remembered 26 names which were written on the back of my shirt. Each day was different names as we moved forward, and I took each day as it came, because if I looked at that 25 marathons and 25 days as a whole, I think I've got no chance. So I took it each day as it came, and then each mile, and grinded it out. I set myself this massive challenge, which the reason for the challenge was just so much bigger than me. I mean, this was remembering those who had paid the ultimate sacrifice, which is huge. And when I started to go, then I started to have like loads of messages from families who, I was running for, and that just gave me more energy and, more desire to actually complete this. But it was a full-on journey that I completed, and then 2022 I decided to go again, but this time I was going to bring on the Falklands, those who never made it home from the Falklands, because it was the 40th anniversary of the liberation. And I was like, I'm going to go again, and I did go again, and halfway through I flew out to the Falklands. They flew me out there, and I ran 4 marathons on the Falkland Islands, which was absolute nails. I mean, the hardest marathons I've ever done, just because of the climate, the elevation, the wind. It was nails. But I took my dad with me, because if there's anyone that was going to be able to motivate me and give me that clarity and that sense of direction, was my dad. So he was my safety driver and my inspiration, and I just got out every day and just ran as best as I could. And I managed to complete that And then actually recently I just completed the toughest foot race in the world, which is the Marathon des Sables, and I had to ask myself some serious questions on that. That was like another level of resolve. It was really hard. I mean, the heat was just unbearable. We were unfortunate because we had a heat wave during the event, and it's hot out in the Sahara anyway that time of year, but this was just like bonkers heat, and a lot of people were just going down all over the place with heat exhaustion. But I survived, got over the line, and so them 3 challenges that I've done over the last 3 years have raised, I'm probably on about £200,000, which is amazing. Thereabouts, not far off. So I'll keep doing I'll keep doing stuff for others, because it's important to give back. And it's been a mad journey, really.
And finally, I don't want to leave, but I know that you've got a speech, so you'll have to. So there's 2 questions that come to mind. One is, tell me about your watch.
So this is quite sentimental, really. It's an Omega Seamaster, and I've always loved growing up watches, and I always sort of bought what I could afford, which is like an Armani watch, because it was like not like an exclusive watch or like a top end watch, but it's a watch that I could afford, and it still looked quite nice. But I just couldn't afford a nice sort of expensive watch. But when I got back from Afghanistan, you have an operational bonus money, and I was like, I'm going to sacrifice a family holiday to get this watch. But I've always wanted a nice watch. Just one would have done. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have done work with Bremont as well, which have been incredible to me with some of the timepieces that I've got, just incredible. But this, I got after my tour of Afghanistan, and I don't wear it very often, but it's gorgeous, and it has a lot of meaning for me. And time is very important for me, especially like in the army. I mean, time is critical. It's not flexible. You make sure that you've got to be at the right time, right place, ready to move, and everything's done on time. So time in the military is a great fit to wearing a gorgeous timepiece. So and
a sentimental attachment, something that you can never replace, is it?
No, you can't. And like I said, I don't wear it often, but when I do, it feels good. I'll never get rid of it. It's got too much
behind it.
It's got too much behind it. And I worked hard for it. So it's all it's a thing of beauty.
And on a final note, we've gone over a ton of stuff about the leadership process and the leadership that you kind of instilled to your men. If there's one lesson or some advice that you could give about leadership to people listening to this or watching this, what do you think it would be?
Be inclusive. Be courageous. Be approachable. And don't be scared to attack. And that could be a project, that could be a business goal, that could be your target within business. Don't be scared to attack what is achievable, because sometimes fear overwhelms people and they don't want to get out of their comfort zone and really go and push the boundaries. And as a leader and as a manager, you have to display courage. And you've got to go on the offensive, because nothing's going to be given to you. If you want to improve and you want to promote and climb, you've got to go on the offensive. But you also take the people with you. You be inclusive and you give them the tools that they will need to then attack behind you, because that's what it's. Infectious leadership is so important. Be by example.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And just a little one, anyone that wants more details, Double Crossed is your book. Incredible read and truly inspirational story. So thank you.
Also the film, because Double Cross was then made into a film, and it's called Danny Boy, and it's available on Sky actually, and it's my life story. And you get to see how steadfast Lucy was with me during some real demanding time. So if you're bored on a Friday night or after work,
A couple of beers,
have a little watch of Danny Boy, because it's on Sky, so it's all good.
I appreciate that, mate. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.